Here are 10 male celebrities. Pause the video here and see if you can count how many you know are sober. And what about now? Count again and add both of your guesses up. I'll tell you the exact number at the end of the video. But you'd think success, fame, Hollywood, money, and alcohol are things that go hand in hand. Glamorous parties, yachts, champagne, cocktails. A lot of people out there associate alcohol with success. But some of the highest performing and wealthiest celebrities do not touch a drop. And they have found immense success after putting down the bottle. Today, we're breaking down 20 male celebrities who don't drink. And if you stick around to the very end of the video, I'll also be sharing a free resource that shows you 3 secrets that will help you get in control of your drinking. So definitely stick around till then. At number 1, we've got Bradley Cooper. Sitting on top of an estimated fortune of over $100 million, Bradley Cooper is among the most successful Hollywood actors ever. After several minor roles, he would get his big break with 2009's The Hangover. This would go on to gross over $1 billion worldwide and set the stage for a string of future box office hits, including Limitless, American Sniper, and A Star Is Born. But his career, especially in the beginning, was not very rosy. Before breaking out with The Hangover, Cooper actually spent several years struggling in minor TV shows. At one point, his appearance on the TV series Alias, where he was working, got cut down, and the young Bradley even considered ditching acting altogether. Heavy drinking and the chaotic lifestyle that came with it played a major part in these struggles. His boozing got so out of hand that at one party, he deliberately started banging his head against the concrete wall as a show of toughness. Poor guy. The turning point for Cooper came when he was 29 years of age. He decided to give up drinking for good. Quote, "I realized I wasn't going to live up to my potential, and that scared the hell out of me. I thought, wow, I'm actually going to ruin my life. I'm really going to ruin it. I knew I had to make some changes if I ever wanted to feel whatever potential I had as a human being. I felt a huge sense of responsibility to my parents, especially to my father." Shortly thereafter, he would land his starring role in The Hangover, and the rest was history. And guys, just before we get into the remaining people, definitely leave me a comment down below of the person who inspires you the most. Ladies and gentlemen, at number 2, we have got Donald Trump. The 45th president of the United States has never hidden his dislike for alcohol. At gatherings, he's even been known to admonish his supporters into abstaining from alcohol and other drugs. Now, no doubt, part of Donald's dislike of mind-altering substances stems from his business-like acumen. Why waste your time and energy on something that will dumb you down and prevent you from, well, making more money? I think so. But a lot of it has to do with a tragedy that struck the Trump family in 1981. That was the year that Donald's older brother, Fred, passed away from heart problems related to alcoholism. Now, before his tragic passing, Fred begged his younger brother to swear that he would never touch the bottle. And that is a promise that Donald proudly kept. Guys, at number 3, we have got Robert Downey Jr. When we try to rank Robert Downey Jr. amongst other Hollywood stars, it's pointless limiting ourselves to today's crop. With a net worth of over $300 million, Downey Jr. is easily one of the most successful actors in the history of filmmaking. Just for his 2015 role in Avengers: Age of Ultron, he is believed to have made close to $80 million. But it was not always like that. At one point in his life, he was so addicted to alcohol and illicit drugs that not only his career, but his entire life seemed over. Multiple arrests for felony possessions of drugs like heroin and cocaine saw him spend 4 months in county jail in 1998, followed by a 1-year stint in, I may pronounce this wrong, but Corcoran State Prison. In Corcoran, he worked for 8 cents an hour serving food to other inmates and cleaning trays. When he got out of prison, he went back to drinking and doing drugs, until eventually Hollywood wanted nothing to do with him. Now, to add insult to injury, his wife left him and he was on the brink of bankruptcy from unpaid taxes. One day in 2003, Downey Jr. decided that he had had enough. He simply tossed his stash of drugs in the sea and threw away the booze. With the help of a 12-step program and a healthy lifestyle, he has stayed drug and alcohol-free ever since. The rest, as they say, was history. Guys, at number 4, we have got Eminem. With sales of 250 million records worldwide, Eminem is one of the most successful artists of all time. He's released 10 #1 US albums, making his commercial success comparable to artists like Madonna and the Beatles. But there was nothing in the young Marshall Mathers' life to suggest that he was destined for greatness. His parents divorced when he was 2, and he grew up with his mother in an unstable environment of abject poverty. Drugs and alcohol were a daily fixture. After making it big with his second album, the Slim Shady LP, he would eventually fall into the same addiction trap as his mother. Addicted to prescription painkillers and sedatives, Eminem isolated himself in his Michigan mansion. Unable to sleep more than 2 hours straight from all the painkillers, he spent his nights watching TV and feasting on junk food. He put on 80 pounds of pure fat and became unrecognizable to his fans. In his own words, "I remember being somewhere and overhearing these kids talking. One of them said, 'That's Eminem.' And the other said, 'No, it's not, man. Eminem ain't fat.' That's when I knew I was getting heavy." After 2 nearly fatal overdoses from prescription painkillers, Eminem decided that he had had enough. With the help of an addiction counselor, he stopped cold turkey. Understandably, the first few days and weeks were tough. By his own account, he couldn't sleep for the first 3 weeks and had to learn how to regain his motor and verbal skills from scratch. Through a lot of physical exercise, Eminem was also able to lose all the excess weight, and he hasn't touched drugs or alcohol since. Ladies and gentlemen, number 5, we have got Rob Lowe. Going on 32 years sober now, the St. Elmo star knows a thing or two about when drinking gets out of hand. He describes hitting rock bottom at the age of 26 in 1990. Quote, "I remember going into the bathroom, looking at myself in the mirror, and my thought process was, you need to drink directly from this bottle of Cuervo Gold so you can go to sleep, so you can wake up, so you can deal with this." 2 days later, he checked himself into rehab and has stayed sober ever since. At number 6, we have got Brad Pitt. Now, we did kick off today's list with Bradley Cooper, and at number 6, we find a close friend of his, Brad Pitt. The latter has actually publicly credited Cooper with helping him stop drinking. Let's have a quick look.
I was there for that song. Thank you, Bradley. Bradley just put his daughter to bed and rushed over here to do this. He's a sweetheart. I got sober because of this guy, and every day has been happier ever since. I love you and I thank you.
Now, after some minor roles, Pitt would get his big break in 1991's Thelma and Louise, where he played a petty crook alongside Susan Sarandon and Geena Davis. Over the following 3 decades, Hollywood's pretty boy has gone on to become one of the highest grossing Hollywood actors of all time with a net worth of $300 million. Remarkably, Pitt would accomplish all this in spite of a long-lasting addiction to alcohol and cannabis. In September 2016, it all came to a head when his wife Angelina Jolie filed for divorce. Now, although she cited irreconcilable differences as the reason, Brad's heavy drinking certainly hadn't helped things. At one point, he was even investigated by the FBI for allegedly assaulting his son Maddox while drunk on board the family's jet. Eventually, the FBI decided not to bring charges. Shortly thereafter, Pitt realized enough was enough. Pitt joined Alcoholics Anonymous and gave up drinking for good, swapping his wine for cranberry juice and fizzy water. He has since regained shared custody of his 6 children. At number 7, we have got Daniel Radcliffe. Daniel Radcliffe needs no introduction as the face of Harry Potter. Following the original 2001 film, Radcliffe would go on to star in 7 sequels, netting him an estimated $70 million by the time he was 22. Going overnight from a normal everyday child to the world-famous face of Harry Potter would be challenging for any 12-year-old, and Radcliffe was no exception. In interviews, he has talked openly about not being able to walk in public without being accosted by fans and paparazzi. He's also discussed the challenges of having to keep a crispy, clean public image to match his on-screen character. He started drinking heavily in 2007, locking himself at his house for days at a time. By 2010, it had gotten so bad that he would usually drink himself to the point of passing out. After a brief dry spell in 2010, Radcliffe finally turned the corner in 2013. Details of how he managed to stop drinking are sparse. Now, from what we can gather, it appears that he received no formal treatment, relying instead on his circle of close people for support. At number 8, we have got Warren Buffett. With a fortune of around $115 billion, the Oracle of Omaha is not only one of the richest men in America, but one of the most respected and studied investors of all time. He currently clones close to 5% of Apple and 10% of Coca-Cola. These are just two of the many investments which have made him rich beyond imagination. Now, 90 years old, Buffett shows no sign of slowing down. To this day, every move of his investment company, Berkshire Hathaway, is closely scrutinized by the investment community. Part of his longevity is due to the fact that he is a complete teetotaler. In addition to staying away from alcohol, Buffett tries to sleep at least 8 hours a day. On the other hand, he is known to be a massive fan of Coke, consuming at least 5 servings a day. At number 9, we have got Colin Farrell. One of Hollywood's notorious bad boys, Colin Farrell has never shied away from controversy. Sex tapes, court drama, a string of beautiful girlfriends, and the reputation as a party animal accompanied his meteoric Hollywood rise during the early 2000s. Those early years were also marked by his ever-increasing alcohol usage, which began when he was still a teenager. After 2 decades of heavy drinking, the Hollywood superstar gave up completely in 2006. This was shortly after attending the premiere of Miami Vice, in which he starred alongside Jamie Foxx. By his own account, watching himself on the big screen, he couldn't remember shooting a single scene from the movie. At that moment, he knew that it was time for a change. He entered rehab and has stayed sober since. At number 10, we have got Russell Brand. The famous TV and radio celebrity, presenter, and comedian is quite outspoken when it comes to alcohol and his drug-abusing past. In 2019, he announced to his 11 million Twitter followers that he had been sober for exactly 19 years. Brand's experiences with drugs started by drinking and smoking cannabis as a youth. He soon embraced the identity of a full-on drug addict, using cocaine, heroin, and pills. He was a real junkie, hanging out in drug houses and getting arrested on multiple occasions. Brand has described hitting his rock bottom on a grey December day in 2002. That's when his manager announced to him that he was going to rehab, like it or not. Scared, confused, and uncertain of the future, he kept on drinking and taking drugs until he walked through the door of the 12-step center the following day. He described the entire experience in the most unpleasant terms.
And I sort of emaciated into it's a kind of crystallization going into treatment. Like, a lot of you dies and fades and withers, and you're exposed with the pain. You're exposed to the pain that you have been trying to avoid.
Now 46 years old, Brand has recast himself as a spiritual person and practices transcendental meditation twice daily. At number 11, we have got Anthony Hopkins. With 6 Oscar, 8 Golden Globe nominations, as well as 9 BAFTA awards, it's difficult to find a more decorated actor than Anthony Hopkins. The 84-year-old Welshman has been very public about his struggles with alcohol in the early part of his career, admitting he was, quote, very difficult to work with and would usually come to work hungover. His life turned around for him after a meeting with a woman from Alcoholics Anonymous. That was in 1975, and he hasn't had a drop since. At number 12, we've got Stephen King. Now, when it comes to full-on drug and alcohol addicts, Stephen King in his heyday was difficult to beat. In his memoirs, he details his progression from an occasionally drunk high school senior to a full-blown alcoholic just 9 years later. Now, his alcoholism was complicated by an addiction to almost everything, though he had a special affinity for cocaine and prescription pills. To hide his addiction from his family, he would even consume mouthwash on account of its high alcohol content. Jeez. Finally, one day, his wife had had enough. In front of an urgently assembled group of friends and relatives, she presented Stephen with an ultimatum: come clean or leave the house. By that point, King had, quite frankly, had enough with drinking. There was nothing more that he wanted than to stop drinking. But his biggest fear was that he wouldn't be able to write sober. After 2 weeks of thinking about it, he finally agreed to go to rehab. His reasoning was that even if he never got to write another page in his life, he would at least get to keep the most important thing in the world: his family. And as we all know, in the decades since, King has not only enjoyed a very happy marriage with his wife, but has gone on to write literally dozens of bestsellers. As he dryly notes in his memoirs, quote, the idea that creative endeavor and mind-altering substances are intertwined is one of the great pop intellectual myths of our time. At number 13, we have got Zac Efron. Now sober for more than 9 years, the 35-year-old Baywatch star opened up about his past addiction in a 2014 interview. In that interview, he spoke about the challenges of dealing with fame and being under the spotlight. Quote, the challenging part was never the work. that was never it. It was the sort of in-between work, the social aspects of it. Everywhere you go, there are people watching, and it can be confusing, and pretty soon, you need a social lubricant. By 2013, it had become abundantly clear to Efron that his drinking was out of control and something needed to change. In March of that year, he booked himself into a rehab, which was followed by a second stint in June of that year. Several months of AA meetings followed that. Nowadays, Efron complements his alcohol-free lifestyle with plenty of weights, calisthenics, and a clean diet with lots of oatmeal and lean proteins. At number 14, we have got Gerard Butler. You probably first saw Gerard Butler in 2007's Sparta, where he played a shredded King Leonidas of Sparta. With this tiny contingent of just 300 men, the Spartan king stood up to a massive Persian army until eventually dying on the field of battle. Now, believe it or not, Butler was actually meant to be a lawyer. After finishing law school and landing a vacancy as a trainee lawyer, he was only a few weeks away from qualifying. That's when his years of heavy drinking eventually caught up to him. Only weeks away from qualifying as a lawyer, he was fired. At 25, he suddenly found himself without qualifications, without a job, and without money. With the help of an acquaintance, he landed a part in a theatre, and he would go on to appear in several small Hollywood roles. A few years into his acting career in the year 2000, he decided that he had had enough. He stopped drinking, and his career slowly but surely started to take off. In a 2012 interview, he stated, "It had to go. I don't miss it. Now it's as if I never had a drink in my life." At number 15, we have got Matthew Perry. Now, we all know him as Chandler Bing from NBC's smash sitcom Friends, which premiered in 1994. By his own account, his excitement from becoming famous soon wore off, leaving the young Perry to deal with a deteriorating drinking problem. As if that weren't enough, a 1997 ski accident resulted in a painful injury. This soon left him addicted to prescription painkillers as well. Now, after a failed rehab stint, Perry was diagnosed with pancreatitis, or severe inflammation of the pancreas, in the year 2000. Aside from being potentially deadly, this disease can also be extremely painful. The diagnosis of pancreatitis was the wake-up call that the star needed to turn his life around. In May of 2001, he entered rehab and has remained alcohol-free ever since. For a time, Perry gave up part of his estate to be used by men with addiction problems. The so-called Perry House operated between 2013 and 2016. At number 16, we have got none other than 50 Cent. The world may know him as 50 Cent, but his real name is Curtis James Jackson III. And ironically, for somebody who shot to fame rapping about the club, 50 Cent doesn't touch alcohol. Born in a rough New York neighborhood to a 15-year-old single mother, nothing in 50 Cent's background suggests future greatness. When he was only 8 years of age, his mother died in a fire. 4 years later, at just the age of 12, he was dealing drugs. By the age of 19, he was the neighborhood drug kingpin with monthly sales of $150,000. Now, remarkably, he resisted the temptation to use drugs throughout. A couple of arrests by the police resulted in a brief custodial sentence, which was the impetus for 50 Cent to take the straight and narrow. He started rapping when he was 21 and soon came to the attention of Eminem and Dr. Dre. And the rest was history. Not only has he shunned drugs his entire life, but 50 Cent also doesn't drink at all. By his own account, this is after a drinking session left him temporarily paranoid. At number 17, we have got Alec Baldwin. For Alec Baldwin, the day that he had his last drink will forever remain etched in his mind. Saturday, the 23rd of February 1985, just before his 27th birthday. In his 2017 memoirs, he describes, quote, falling in love with alcohol at the age of 22. A combination of heavy drinking and cocaine abuse threatened to derail not only the young actor's career, but cost him his life, as he overdosed and ended up in hospital. After managing to stay clean for 6 months, on that Saturday of 1985, an old friend came to visit. The two of them got high, and the friend left to go and get some more coke. He never came back, leaving Baldwin to wait for him in desperation. That day was the straw that broke the camel's back. 2 days later, Baldwin went to Alcoholics Anonymous and has remained sober ever since. Guys, at 18, we have got Joe Biden. So, Donald Trump's departure from the White House was followed by yet another teetotaling president, Joseph Robinette Biden Jr., or Joe as he likes to be called. Like Trump, Biden's dislike for alcohol has roots that are close to home. In 2008, he publicly stated that there are enough alcoholics in my family. Biden grew up in a family full of heavy drinkers, of which perhaps the heaviest was his uncle Edward. Like Trump, Biden claims to have never touched a drink in his life. Guys, at 19, we have got Cristiano Ronaldo. Arguably the greatest footballer ever, Cristiano Ronaldo does not touch alcohol with a 10-foot pole. This, amongst his other numerous healthy habits, begins to explain how he can still play at the elite level of European football at 37 years of age. But professional considerations only tell you part of the story. You see, like many of the other men in today's video, Ronaldo has witnessed the devastation alcohol can bring to families firsthand. His father was a veteran of the Portuguese War with Angola. After the war, he returned home to a life of chronic unemployment and severe alcohol dependence. Ronaldo's older brother, Hugo, also struggled with alcohol addiction before his famous younger brother paid up for him to enter a rehab. Hugo has remained sober ever since. So we round off our top 20 list with another billionaire, Larry Ellison. Currently America's fourth richest man behind Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, and Bill Gates, the founder of Oracle Corporation sits at a mind-boggling fortune of $120 billion. Though Ellison is accepting of other people drinking, he doesn't personally touch the stuff. The reason is pretty obvious. Booze doesn't mix well with running a multi-billion-dollar company. Strict alcohol avoidance is only part of a healthy lifestyle, which includes daily exercise, along with activities like sailboat racing and tennis. At 72 years of age, he shows no sign of slowing down. On the contrary, his fortune is growing at an accelerated pace. This past December, after unexpected increases in revenue led to a 16% jump in Oracle's stock, his fortune soared by $12 billion. Not bad for a day's work. The answer at the beginning of the video was 10, and if you click the video here, you can get access to the free secrets that will help you control your drinking.